On this episode of the Catholic Echo podcast from the Diocese of Youngstown, brought to you by the annual Diocesan Appeal and Cumulus Radio Youngstown, we're talking about parish mergers and collaborations with Bishop David Bonnar, Msgr. John Zuraw, and Father Chris Cicero. Find more about this episode's topic, including articles from the Catholic Echo, at www.catholicecho.org/podcast. And now the host of the Catholic Echo podcast, Dennis Viviano.
Hello and welcome to the Catholic Echo podcast. Today we will be discussing recent church mergers, new parish names, as well as collaborations. We are joined by Bishop David Bonnar. Nice to see you as always.
Thank you so much, Dennis.
In January, the diocese announced the next stage in the pastoral plan, and parishes in Ashtabula, Mahoning, Portage, Stark, and Trumbull began the process for preparing for parish mergers or consolidations. Now, the process was first started by the late Bishop George Murray in 2019 and has continued to develop since your installation in 2021. Now, whenever there was a decision to be made on parish mergers or collaboration, that goes through a group of priests who make up a special council. Can you talk about that council?
Yes, that's the Diocesan Presbyteral Council. It's mandated by canon law. It's a group of priests who consult with me on major decisions. Another facet is the diocesan consultors, who also are an advisory group that, there's certain times when I need to consult with them. Yeah, this process, and it is a process. I mean, it's not a simple decision. This all began with a plan established by Bishop Murray because we needed to match our resources with the needs. We just don't have the priests that we had years ago, and yet we still have many of the same parishes and buildings and mass times. And so it's just been an intentional effort that is all about trying to give what we can give, because we can't give what we don't have. And at the same time, to support our priests. I mean, our priests today are really taxed. I mean, so many of them now are engaging in what we call multiple parish ministry. That means a lot of times, if they're not merged, it means a duplication or triplication of meetings, be it pastoral council meetings, finance council meetings, staff meetings. So this whole idea of merger is just we're always stronger when we're together and when there's more of us. And it's not always easy. Some may look at this and view it as like an arranged marriage of sorts. We really try not to be precipitous about this. But there are certain parishes that have been working together for some time, and it's just a no-brainer that they become one. And sometimes that's where the Presbyteral Council comes in. We look at this, and they make a recommendation to me. Yes, Bishop, we think that these 2 or 3 parishes should become one.
Now, these are changing times in the church, declining attendance, priest retirements, not as many seminarians are available. How concerned are you with this trend?
Well, I think with every challenge, there's opportunities. And I think what's happening before our very eyes is the church, as we knew it, is being pruned. It's changing. And the joy of the gospel, Pope Francis speaks about, when he speaks about parish life, he speaks about how we need to make sure that we don't fall prey to what he calls this ecclesial introversion, which means that we just exist for ourselves or we just look at ourselves. I think the opportunity that's before us is to be stretched, to be broadened, and to recognize that many of us grew up with the one parish mindset, one priest, one school. I think those days, at least in this Rust Belt, are pretty much coming to an end. We're dealing with collaborations and we're dealing with potential mergers where it's just out of necessity and out of just basic common sense that we come together. And, the church is no different in this regard than industry. There's a lot of this happening, in the industry around us. And it's a matter of staying relevant and vital. I don't think any of us should put our heads down. This is the reality. This is where we are. And I've often said that to our people. We have to live in reality. But God's always in that reality. And God's going to lead us. He's not going to abandon us. I think what we're looking at potentially is a smaller church, but I think a stronger church and a more flexible church in terms of, we're such creatures of convenience. Well, my mass, my time, my church, my pew. I think God is kind of just stirring things up for us and saying, look, we need to bend. We need to adjust. I did marriage preparation for many years when I was a parish priest, and one of the talks that the couples would offer would be on planning adjustments in marriage. And, if we don't adjust in life, we die or we box ourselves in. So I think this is an opportunity, but I think it's also a time of adjustment where we just need to do what the Spirit is asking of us.
And speaking of little adjustments, again, a parish name change can be one that's emotional. My personal parish going through that right now. But can you briefly discuss the process of what happens when a church is merged and a parish is asked to submit a new name?
So keep in mind that in a merger, the name of the church remains the same. That doesn't change. But because the faith community is assuming a new identity, it makes perfect sense to give them a new name. So we invite the faithful, with the help of the pastor and the pastoral council, to be intentional about what name might be suitable or fitting for this new community. And so they submit a list of names, and from those lists, I typically make the decision, and I more often than not choose the first name that's the most predominant name that came up. But there are some situations where we've had to go in different directions.
Me personally, as a parishioner in Niles and Our Lady of Mount Carmel and St. Stephen's, the new St. Pope John the 23rd parish, to me, the name change is a way to show unity. Is that what you're going for, correct?
Absolutely, but change is hard. And, you have some people whose family members perhaps helped build the church or certain parish programs, and the thought of changing the structure or the name can be unsettling at times. And I recognize that because emotion is real. It's part of the human experience. But part of living in reality is working through that emotion and, looking at the facts and embracing what we need to embrace.
And just finally, most of the names are out this year, but Ashtabula and Mahoning Deanery Parish name changes will be announced later this year or perhaps early January?
By the end of this year, we should announce those, and then come January 1st, they will become a new entity.
Bishop Bonnar, thank you very much. Coming up on the Catholic Echo podcast, we'll hear from Diocese of Youngstown Vicar General, Msgr John Zuraw, who is overseeing the merger between St. Charles and St. Luke parishes in Boardman. Make sure to keep it here. Much more when we return.
The Catholic Echo podcast will inform and entertain the faithful of the diocese by covering various topics that are relevant in the church today. Bishop David J. Bonnar begins the podcast with your host, Dennis Biviano, on the topic of the day, and then you'll hear from others with expertise on that topic. You can listen to the Catholic Echo podcast on WHOT-FM 101, WYFM-FM 102.9, WQXK-FM 105.1 on Sundays at 6:30 a.m., or catch it online by going to www.catholicecho.org/podcast. The Catholic Echo podcast is produced by the Communications Department of the Diocese of Youngstown.
When storms hit, we are there to rebuild. As our neighbors age, we lighten their burdens. As our veterans adjust, we ease their transitions. In every part of the country, we are there. We are Catholic Charities. We serve millions each year regardless of their faith. We put food back on tables, unlock doors, and walk together on the road back. Help Catholic Charities serve your neighbors in need. Join us at wearethere.us.
The Catholic Echo magazine is delivered free of charge to anyone who is registered at a parish in the Diocese of Youngstown. But subscriptions are also available for non-parishioners. A subscription costs $40 per year, and you can buy one for yourself or gift a subscription to a loved one. Email catholicecho@youngstowndiocese.org for more information. Welcome back to the Catholic Echo podcast as we continue our discussion on parish mergers and collaborations. Joining me now is a man who wears many hats here in the diocese, Vicar General and pastor of both St. Charles Parish and St. Luke Parish in Boardman, Msgr John Zuraw. Nice to see you as always, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dennis.
Well, in January, it was announced that St. Charles and St. Luke parishes in Mahoney County would become one and share a new name by the end of the year. Can you give our listeners some perspective on where that process stands right now, some of the next steps, and your role as pastor in facilitating this merger?
And Dennis, because we look at our parishes as our homes, sometimes what happens is that with any change comes hesitation. So at St. Charles and St. Luke, we have taken the approach to ease into this merger. So immediately what happened is once the merger was announced, or the planned merger, we gathered for town hall meetings with both parishes, where individuals were able to hear for themselves what are some of the statistics, why the church needs to move either into a merger or a collaborative unit, and then invite them to express any concern or situation that they might see as being problematic. So we did this in the early part. So where we're now is that we're developing a parish council, and the first part of August, we will have our first meeting. And one of the chief tasks for us is to develop a mission statement, who we are as the combined parish. What are some of the elements of, how we are going to be identified? Once we create that mission statement, we will be able then to move to the next agenda item, which is the selection of names. During the month of June, we had parishioners submit names, and those names, were abundant, but they were all over the ballpark. To identify who we are, we must know first what the mission that we are going to bring forth to the community, and how that mission then ultimately is going to fit into that new title that, will be brought forth in January of 2025.
In that new parish name, going through it myself at my parish at Our Lady of Mount Carmel and St. Stephen, that's honestly a show of unity, that name change, correct?
It does. It shows that, once again, we are not two separate communities, but we have become one community. Of course, the buildings will retain the name in which they were dedicated to, whether that be St. Luke or St. Charles, but the overarching name will identify the new community. A lot of the parishioners see this as a very exciting time, the naming of the new building. Just as their ancestors were part of creating St. Charles, which in 2026 will be 100 years old, St. Luke's 60 years old. This is our opportunity to set a direction for the future. Give to the people of the Boardman area who ultimately we are.
Now, what would you say the main message you've tried to convey to parishioners, parish council, since this merger was announced?
I think the important aspect is, once again, 4 aspects of what it means to be a great parish, that we have shared leadership. And through myself and Father Klein and Sister Mary Alice Koval, we have demonstrated a unified and strong leadership. The great parishes develop a spiritual maturity, a plan for discipleship. As the world changes, the church changes. We want a Catholic community within the Boardman area for years to come. We have to move beyond just being isolated communities and see the wider picture. What we have tried to do also is to excel on our weekend liturgies. There is a prayer that each and every one of us prays during the universal prayers for that sense of unity. And, once again, this parish creation will demonstrate that we just can't look at ourselves or navel gaze. We have to evangelize into the greater community. And if we're unified and if we are one, we're not going to be an embarrassment where we're fighting against one another. But, the gospel message will be proclaimed.
And we mentioned a little bit about the name that gets narrowed down to about 3 or so, and then that's presented to Bishop Bonnar. Is that how that goes?
That will be presented to Bishop Bonnar with reasons. Why is our first choice, our second choice, our third choice viable options for this new name?
Last question I wanted to ask you is, what advice do you have for fellow pastors and parishioners alike that are going through a similar situation?
To have patience with our parishioners, to have patience with our staff, to have patience with ourselves. Sometimes what happens is that the newness becomes so overwhelming for individuals that they fail to see the ultimate good of the outcome. So if we patiently listen, if we patiently walk, if we patiently are attentive, then the ultimate goal will be achieved. But if we rush through something, if we fail to communicate, then we're only shooting ourselves in the foot.
Thank you, Monsignor Zuraw. Coming up next in the Catholic Echo podcast, you'll hear from Father Christopher Cicero, a Warren native who has found great success in operating 3 parishes within the city. Much more when we return.
The Catholic Echo is the media arm of the Catholic Diocese of Youngstown, and it seeks to inform and entertain Catholics in our 6-county diocese by forging stronger connections to our parish communities and highlighting the many blessings of Catholic life in our region. If you have a story idea for the Catholic Echo magazine, podcast, or website, send an email to catholicecho@youngstowndiocese.org. We'd love to hear your ideas.
Did you know that the Catholic Echo magazine is delivered 10 times per year to 52,000 Catholic households in Northeast Ohio? That is more than 150,000 people. And the Catholic Echo website, catholicecho.org, has been averaging 30,000 views per month since it launched in February 2023. Advertise your business, special event, or service with the Catholic Echo in print or online. Email catholicecho@youngstowndiocese.org. Advertising discounts are available for Catholic institutions, as well as for businesses that commit to 5 or 10 issues in a year. Email catholicecho@youngstowndiocese.org or visit the advertising tab at catholicecho.org for more information.
Wondering what happened to timely Catholic news in the Diocese of Youngstown? It's at catholicecho.org. There you'll find recent stories about Catholic life in all 6 counties of the Diocese of Youngstown, plus recent videos, podcasts, and even national and global news. You'll find it all at catholicecho.org under the News tab. Sign up for the email newsletter while you're there to have Catholic news delivered to your inbox. This is Katie Wagner, Editor-in-Chief of the Catholic Echo magazine, and I'm here today with Father Chris Cicero, who is pastor of the newly merged St. Teresa of Calcutta Parish. Thank you for joining us today, Father.
Thank you, Katie. Pleasure to be here.
So the topic for the podcast today is on parish mergers, and we know that you recently went through this. So tell me about the current merger, which was effective in July, correct?
That's right.
So which parishes merged together?
So Warren had 3 parishes prior to the merger. We had Blessed Sacrament Parish, St. Mary and St. Joseph Parish, and St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Parish. So it was bringing together those 3 parish communities into one parish as St. Teresa of Calcutta. And 2 of those parishes that came into the merger were already part of mergers in the past. So St. Elizabeth Ann Seton was St. James Parish and St. Cyril Methodius Parish. And then St. Mary and St. Joseph Parish was most recently St. Mary Parish and St. John Paul II, but then over the years they had already kind of tied in St. Pius X and Christ Our King Parish on the west side of Warren.
And how did that transpire? Was this a need that you saw on the parish level and said, hey, we might need to combine resources? Or is this, something that the bishop saw and he said this is a step that we need to take? Or how exactly did that unfold?
So the parishes in Warren have been collaborating for quite a long time. So I had been pastor of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Blessed Sacrament since 2020. So we had been sharing the priest, sharing a mass schedule for quite a long time. About a year ago, 2023, St. Mary and St. Joseph came into that collaboration. And again, we had been streamlining more and more things. And then officially at the beginning of this year, the process was initiated for us to do a formal merger, which is what brought about the change of the name and the official merging of components of parish life that up to this point had been separate. So the finances had been separate, the parish council, the finance council, there was separate parish offices, there were distinct staffs. And the merger just kind of basically took all of that, and it creates one parish community, one parish apparatus to serve the whole city of Warren, but we use 3 churches. So St. James Church, St. Mary Church, Blessed Sacrament Church, those are all places where we have Mass on the weekend, Masses throughout the weekdays. We have funerals at the 3 churches, weddings. People can have their First Holy Communion at the church that they have kind of historically been affiliated with. Mm-hmm. So we're retaining those campuses, make sure that parish activities happen all across the city. We try to make sure that we're always thinking about including the people who have come from these different locations, making parish life present at the different locations.
So that you're kind of serving the area equally.
Right.
That makes sense. And now you mentioned the name. Can you tell me how you landed on the name?
Yeah.
Were the parishioners involved in the process?
Sure. Parishioners were involved. So we went through a process of receiving suggestions from the parishioners.
Okay.
And then those suggestions were narrowed. They took surveys, and then we presented names to Bishop Bonnar, and then he went through those names and identified St. Teresa of Calcutta as one which had been suggested by the parishioners as a name for our parish, which it was really, I think, a great identity for us, because St. Teresa of Calcutta is a household name.
Absolutely.
Mother Teresa is a household name. A lot of people who are alive today were alive while she was alive and working. One of the biggest personalities on the world stage, especially the Catholic world stage in the 20th century. And there's a lot there for us to tap into in terms of inspiration and mission for our parish. So, of course, the thing that is most associated with Mother Teresa is serving the poorest of the poor. And so I think that that has to become a stronger part of the mission for this parish. We have people who have always done marvelous jobs serving the poor in our community. But I think now, like if Mother Teresa, St. Teresa of Calcutta, is going to be our patron saint, then we have to look harder now and really live up to following the example that she gave. She's our patron saint of serving poorest of the poor and looking at our parish territory and identifying, what are the needs of people who have less in this territory. And if that's having less materially, then what can we do to address it? If that's having less spiritually, then how are we going to try to attract people to the church and find a spiritual home in the church? The one thing I think is important also about St. Teresa of Calcutta is not to boil her identity down to only Christian service. If you read about Mother Teresa, you learn that Christian service was flowing from very deep spirituality, prayer life of the sisters, the sacramental life of the sisters, the embrace of the poor on the outside, I guess in a material way, was also flowing from their own embrace of poverty in an interior life. So what they were doing to live sacrificially and simply, all those things were coming together to create what we know as the identity of St. Teresa of Calcutta.
Yeah, and I often hear about the time that she came and visited our diocese in, the 80s. And that was actually one of our historical from the archives items for our September issue. We have a photo of her. I think she was in Canton.
I did not know that. More than I need to learn every day.
That's really lovely, and I know a lot of us here were excited to see that we'd have a parish named after her too. So tell me a little bit. I heard, and I saw some of it myself, how effectively you were able to communicate some of the changes that happened. So tell me, what were the various steps that you took to explain to your parishioners what was happening and get the word out about even the time frame?
I think with communicating anything in the parish, but as something as large as a parish merger, it's never just one means of communication. So we would put out information through the bulletin, especially through my bulletin column. We would put information out on our Facebook page, talking about it at Mass. We had a couple of town hall meetings about the merger. Then you have information coming from the diocesan level, coverage from the Echo and different means that are saying, to the whole community of the diocese, look, these mergers are happening here and there in the diocese. We're going to do some more. There's still more to be done. I think maybe a mailer or something in the coming months. But also it helped that a local newspaper came and they ran a story. And that really took the message to the community at large. You could see, at that point, you could see now people that I know who are not affiliated with the parish, now they know, oh, you guys are bringing those three churches into this merger and you're going to be called St. Teresa of Calcutta. So those are people who I would say almost certainly would not have read anything that I wrote or heard what I said, but now through the news media, they came to know what's going on.
Yeah, that's great that they were able to spread awareness like that. And now, we're a couple months into this process. What would you say some of the successes have been of the merger so far?
Yeah, successes, I would say, is reorganization of the staff structure and the structure of what we call apostolates in my parish. So there's an apostolate for building up families. There's an apostolate for serving the poor. There's one for parish life, so like community engagement. There's apostolate for liturgy, all these different things. Taking that structure and being able to pool the whole parish community, all the Catholics in Warren, to be served by one staff, to be looking at parish activity and engagement through kind of one structure of apostolates. It just makes it less fragmented. Mm-hmm. And I was able to take, employees pretty much that we already had and kind of reorganize them and say, if you've been doing bits and pieces in all these areas before, now why don't we say that your job is going to be to oversee basically all of our apostolates having to do with charitable work. And so if there's going to be something for serving the poor or serving the homebound or whatever it is that's going to fall to you, no matter if these people involved came from any of the former churches, whatever, now it's your job. And that kind of reorganization has made running the parish a lot more clear and simple, I suppose, but certainly more clear.
Well, thank you so much, Father.
You're welcome.
It's been really helpful talking to you about this process. And if the listeners would like some more information, you can go to www.doy.org or www.catholicecho.org. Thanks again, Father.
God bless you. Thanks.
The Catholic Echo podcast is a production of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Youngstown. Your host has been Dennis Biviano. Have a blessed day, and may God be with you.